Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Jason White. This is Jason's Weird Reads, and this is where I like to talk about horror books, fantasy books, and science fiction books. If that sounds cool to you, please hit the subscribe button. Alright, so this is my final wrap-up for 2020. It's my final recent reads for 2020. And I'm going to start this off with a little bit of reading stats here. Nothing too deep, but I just wanted to go over what I read, and I don't have the exact number of what I read because I read some of my friends' books, and well, you can't really count. They're unpublished. You can't really count that in your Goodread reading. So I'm gonna on Facebook. I have 58 books read, and there's a book that I'm pretty sure I'm gonna finish before the end of the year, and so I'll put that to 59. So roughly around 60 or 61 books I read. Of the books that I was able to catalog on my Goodreads account, I read 15,283 pages, which is down from last year. Last year I got almost 17,000 pages read, and I think that's because I read more Wheel of Time books back in 2019 than I did in 2020. I only had like 4 books left when it turned 2020. I met my goal, and which was 55 books. I read at least 61 books, so I'm happy with that. I set my my goal for 2021 to be 55 books again because why not? I'm hoping to read more books, but I don't know how realistic that is because a lot of the books I want to read this year are really fat. so let's hope for the best. I guess we'll just cross our fingers and toes and we'll hope for the best. Alright, so my final recent reads here, there was only supposed to be 4 recent reads this year, but I ended up doing 5, and I'm not entirely sure how that happened. I should plan better for next year. So I read, there's 10 books here that I read over the last couple of months of the year, and I slowed down a little bit during the spring and summer. I read quite a bit, and I got, at one point I was 10 books ahead of schedule on my Goodreads challenge, and I was like, woohoo, you know, I'm kicking ass. But this year, or the final part of the year, is where I tend to slow down because of SAD. I just kind of lose focus and want to sleep a little bit longer, and so I did slow down a bit, and that's fine. Let's get into the books here. Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I read this book, I believe it was in September. I can't remember exactly. It might have been even in August, but I don't think I've put this in a wrap-up or a recent reads. So this book is, I saw one booktuber review it recently. I can't remember his name, but he called it the creepy Downton Abbey in his title. I haven't watched his video for that yet, and that's, you know, that's pretty much what this book is, except it's not entirely creepy. The only reason why I would call it creepy is that it's much darker than Downton Abbey ever was, and I've watched the whole series. I watched it with my wife, and I enjoyed it. But this book actually reminds me of that series a lot. Actually, I guess you could say the series reminds you of Rebecca. There's a lot of similarities, except for the main plot. I forget what his title is, but he has a title. And he owns a house that has a name, which is the Manderley House. And it's like basically a mansion, a giant mansion. If you've seen Downton Abbey, you know what I'm talking about. And it's run with a staff. And while working in a hotel where this man is visiting, he meets, not Rebecca, the main character. Rebecca, you never actually do meet Rebecca in the book because she's dead. This is that man's ex-wife. Well, deceased wife is a much better term. She died a year previous, and he falls in love with our protagonist, which I don't think she's ever named. And he sweeps her up off her feet and takes her back to the Manderley house. And while there, nothing creepy exactly happens, but it's funny how Rebecca, the deceased wife, how she haunts the place regardless. And there's another interesting thing about this story in that you don't know exactly who to root for, because once certain things are revealed, you're kind of like going, am I supposed to root for these people? So, yeah. Other than that, though, I actually really loved this book. It just confused me because I didn't know if I was supposed to be rooting for someone or if I'm just along for the ride. I think it was the latter of that. Alright, I also read Planet of the Undead by Thomas S. Flowers. Now this, I've said in previous books, or in previous videos, that this book, it's not a well-written piece of literature. It's just for fun. It's a zombie story, and it has, I believe it's in Afghanistan, might be Afghanistan or Iraq, war veterans in it. And it's the beginning of it's book one of a series. I think it's a trilogy, maybe a quadrology, I'm not sure. But it was a lot of fun. I think I gave it 3.5 stars. It was on Goodreads. I would recommend it to anyone who loves zombie stories and who just wants to kill some time with something that's just fun. I also read Clown in a Cornfield by Adam Cesare. This book was not exactly what I thought it was going to be. I basically just wanted a clown slasher story who happens to be in a cornfield. I didn't exactly get that, so I'm going to leave it at that. It becomes something else, and I enjoyed it for what it was, and I really enjoyed the messages in the book itself. I felt they were spot on, but I wasn't expecting it, and that didn't really hamper my reading of it, but it confused me. Mostly because sometimes when you go into a book, like, oh, I'm going to read a slasher book, and it turns out not to be exactly a slasher story per se. It becomes something else. You're just like, what's going on? And that was me in this book. Overall, though, I did enjoy it. That's my second Adam Cesare book. So, and I've enjoyed both, so I'll definitely be reading more of his work. I read The Good House by Tananarive. I know I read this one in October because I read it for Halloween. And I absolutely fell in love with this story. The ending kind of fell flat for me, and I don't know why that is. I just lost interest by the ending. But the first 3/4 to, I don't know, 90% of it, that was fantastic. I absolutely loved this story. I listened to it on audio, and the narrator, her name escapes me right now. If I remember, I'll put it down, you know, in this part of the screen here. She did a fantastic job, and I saw, researching her as a narrator, she does the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin as well. So I've been meaning to reread the 5th season and then finish off that series at some point. I might go the audiobook route just because of her narration. But yeah, The Good House by Tananarive. I've been meaning to read this book for like way too long. And I finally read it and I loved it. So yeah, there's that. Definitely check that out if you haven't. It's a fairly thick book. It was like 22 hours on audiobook, maybe 24. And that would probably work out to be like 600 pages. It's ridiculously long, but I don't think... I think it was worth, you know, the extra fat, so to speak. Alright, I also read in October The Woman in Black by Susan Hill, and I absolutely love this story as well. I'm more familiar with the movies because I've seen the Daniel Radcliffe movie at least twice. I hate the ending of that movie, but the rest of it's pretty good. And there's elements of the book in that version. I also saw the 1989 TV, the BBC one. That was really good too. So I read this book, and it's completely, well, it's very different. It's a very different beast, but it's very spooky. Susan Hill is very good at doing the spooky haunted house story, and I loved it. I also read The Keeper of the Gate by William Meikle. I've been talking about this book a lot as well, so I'm not going to go on too long about it here, but it's basically a collection of 3 short stories. Well, 2 short stories and 1 novella, and it was just a lot of fun. There's a few videos where I discussed this book. It's a lot of fun, though. If you like cosmic horror, you're going to enjoy this. Definitely. I also read Creature by Hunter Shea. Now, this is my second Hunter Shea. The first one was Just Add Water, and that one was, it was just for shits and giggles. Like, there was nothing all that serious about that. It was fun. It was sort of like Planet of the Undead by Thomas S. Flowers. There was nothing deep or anything like that really in that story, but this story was like, it was like a complete 180 turn from that book. And you know, I completely appreciated it for that. I loved Creature, and I think I might be a Hunter Shea fan now. I guess we'll see. I also read Moon Crusted Snow by Waubgeshig Rice. I probably butchered his first name, and I completely apologize for that. But this book, it was a post-apocalyptic book, where you don't technically know exactly what the apocalypse is, but I think people have speculated that the Earth turns on its axis, so north is now south and all that, and or at least its magnetic field switches, and it wipes out the power. So they lose their power. They're up in the live on the reservation. I believe it's North Ontario. So they're living in the reservation. They're pretty much isolated from our society and a lot of our technology. They do have the internet, and it's kind of funny because at the beginning of this story, they kind of joke around about how they too have become reliant on the internet, and so one day the power goes out. So of course that wipes out the internet too. They don't know what's going on. They think maybe it's just like, 'cause the power always goes out on them, like for a day, sometimes two, and eventually it'll come back on, but it never comes back on. And so as time progresses, they begin to worry that something bad has gone on down south, and they're not wrong. Something bad did happen. As I mentioned, they think it was well, it's not speculated in the book, but I've heard people speculate that it was like the magnetic field reversing so that north is now south, all that. And it's wiped out the power, and you know, causing a catastrophe, knocking us back a few centuries. But there's a couple people who come up to the reservation thinking that they can survive, and it becomes sort of like a third apocalypse for the natives in this story. The first one being colonization, the second one being the events that wipe out technology, and then the third one being the intruders once again coming, the white man coming and destroying everything that they've tried to build and live off. And it's a fascinating book. I absolutely loved it. I highly recommend it. It keeps you thinking as you're reading as to what the author is trying to do, and it's just awesome. I loved it. I also read Night of the Mannequins by Stephen Graham Jones. This was the year of Stephen Graham Jones. I read like 3 of his books this year, and this one I would say is probably my least favorite. I've heard a lot of people are on the fence about this book. People loved it or hated it. I lean more towards loving it. It was a great book, but people are also on the fence as to how easy it was to read. Some people think it was very easy to read. Other people think it was kind of difficult to read. And on this one, I fall on the difficult side because it's first person, but it's from the perspective of a teenage boy. And he uses a lot of slang that kind of, I'm like, what's he talking about? And so that was interesting. It was a bit of a slog. If it wasn't written in that style, I think I would have gobbled it up a lot more. But other than that, it was a lot of fun. And finally here, I read Promised Land by Barack Obama. This was a fascinating read because Barack, as you know, was president for 2 terms in the United States, and he intentionally went in with the idea to create a lot of change. And it's funny how that kind of resulted because well, we all know about what's been going on the last 4 or 5 years in the States and what's going on right now. But this book here was just fascinating. I absolutely loved reading it. I kind of look up to Barack Obama. I think we need more people like him in politics. You know, the road to presidency, the way he describes it, he doesn't use predestination at all. I don't think he believes in predestination at all. But the way it reads, it's almost as though he was destined to become president. The second he put on his, decided to put on his political hat. What was more fascinating about this story, I found anyway, was his struggles while in the office, and being the first black president of the United States. The challenges he faced being the first person of color in the big chair. And also, he would add in little bits here and there of his family life and how that suffered because of his choices to become, what he became, and the struggles that he and his family would face. So it was fairly well balanced. My biggest complaint about this book, and he kind of addresses that in the first part of the book, in that he tends to be a bit wordy. And he's definitely a bit wordy in this book, but ultimately I appreciated it. And also, I mentioned this before, but I'll mention it again. I actually read or listened to the audiobook version of this, and it's read by Obama himself, so that was a special treat. It was nice hearing somebody speak who was in a position of power, speak as eloquently as this man could. Right now, I am reading a book, an advanced e-copy of a book by Chad Lutzke. I'm hoping to have it done by the end of the year so that I can add it. And it's Bloodletter, his first in a vampire series. And this is a bit different for him. In fact, it's so different that he renamed himself in a sense. He's writing under C.E. Lutzke. Still Chad Lutzke, but he says that this is for a different audience, but his original audience, the readers who are more familiar with his other works, could and might still enjoy Bloodletter, but he's trying to break into a different audience with this, and you can tell reading it. It is very different. It's a different beast from what you might be familiar with in reading Chad Lutzke. So we'll see. So far I am enjoying it though. It's good. And I'm looking forward to seeing where it's going. It's a vampire story, but it's I want to say it's sort of like a Anita Blake, but without all the sex. Or there's other series like that, with supernatural beings. It's about a vampire and her lawyer best friend, and her lawyer best friend, he sees a lot of bad people every day, and she has the power, the vampire has the power to wipe people's memories of certain things with the use of she hypnotizes them. And when she hypnotizes them, she can sort of wipe out certain parts of who they are, or certain memories. There's, of course, costs to this, which I was happy to see in Chad's story here. But I'm only on like chapter 4. There's quite a bit more story to go, and I'm really looking forward to finishing it by the end of this week. So I don't know if I'll be able to. Alright, so that is my final recent reads and wrap up of 2020. It's been a crazy year. So thank you for watching. Keep being creative, keep being safe out there, and be kind to one another. And I'll catch you guys in the next bookish video.